Good morning, football fans. Draft week is officially underway. We are now just 3 days away from the first card being handed in. And the Eagles, as of now, have two cards to hand in on night one of the NFL draft at number 10 and number 30. We'll see if those things come down. What's going to come down here on Birds 365 over the next 2 hours? Well, J-Mac and I are going to chat it up with each other and with Ian Cummings from Pro Football Network, one of their draft gurus. And then James going to exit stage left. You got to get over to the NovaCare complex today, huh, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, I got to go talk to a player's worth, I don't know, what, $250 million
Exactly.
for the first time. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts talking today after the big contract. First day of Eagles offseason strength and conditioning program as well. So, big day. Last of 32 teams. So all 32 teams are back at it.
The NovaCare complex where less is more. And they can kind of make that claim since they were in the Super Bowl last year. Can they get back there again this year? Big week for it to get their season underway. And, of course, on the draft on Thursday, and we'll have plenty of draft talk. But first on Jalen Hurts. More power to him, and we all thought the contract would get done. The timing of it was something that we weren't exactly sure about. They got it done before the draft ever started, and as you mentioned, $250 million is a nice number to know and good neighborhood to be in. But one thing that I think everyone across the board has continued to say is, if you're going to make this kind of a financial commitment, you want to make it with a young man who is like Jalen Hurts, who is committed as Jalen Hurts is, who takes his job as seriously as Jalen Hurts does, as driven as Jalen Hurts is, and how good a leader Jalen Hurts is. So as far as the periphery characteristics you want, he checks every single box. But let's be honest, he's a boring quote. Because of all those things that I just stated, it doesn't make him the most intriguing interview you can get. Will this be now that Jalen Hurts is scheduled to make $250 million. Will anything change in how he handles himself in front of you guys, the assembled Eagles media?
Yeah, no. He's a robot, man. I mean, that's part of his success. He doesn't, unless you're looking for a T-shirt quote. Sometimes you get one of those, but. Now he's on point, and that's part of it. That's a big part of it. I mean, you just saw our the old defensive coordinator in Philadelphia, Jonathan Gannon, stick his foot in his mouth over the weekend.
Oh, we're gonna get to Gannon. I thought we'd start with Hurts, but we'll get to
that's a head coach. You know, it's not always easy to stay on point when speaking extemporaneously. As you know, Jody, you've been doing this a very long time. Sometimes things come out wrong, and not with Jalen, man. He's very focused. He's very on point. But you're right. I mean, you can't go off into meandering thoughts if you don't want to get in trouble occasionally. So it's part of it. It's part of what makes him what he's turned into as a player. Not a big part, but I think it's, one of those aspects of discipline that sort of bleeds over to more important aspects of his development as a football player. I just think it if you're that disciplined in one aspect, you tend to be that disciplined in all aspects.
Right. Here's where I was hoping to go with this. And here's the percentage chance, and I think it can actually go there. But we might as well try anyway. You or one of your other cohorts hopefully go down this road. Jalen, with the draft coming up on Thursday, Eagles having 2 first-round picks, wouldn't you like to see, nothing like a leading question, wouldn't you like to see them add like a significant offensive piece to make your life easier and protect their $255 million investment? The chance that
you want to go down that band route. Nah, you never know. I mean, when the quarterback shows up, there's a bunch of people that show up that typically aren't there. So you never know what's going to come out of something. Just what I was talking about again. You never know what's going to come out of somebody's mouth, but you're certainly not going to answer that. He certainly knows.
He's going to say, "Show me some Bijan."
Yeah. I mean,
today, not going to throw that up on a T-shirt.
No. In fact, I think if you put the sodium pentothal into Jalen Hurts, he'd be in the same category as what I've been trying to explain. He'd be in the we don't need I don't want to hand the ball. I don't want to turn around and hand the ball off. If you put that true serum in him, he'd be like, the Eagles were the number one rushing team in the NFL out of 11 personnel last season. Number one. It doesn't get better than that. Last time I looked, you can't.
By what metric are you using to put them at number one?
They're number one in 11 personnel. When there's three
Just
receivers,
total rushing yards.
Yeah, total rushing yards. When they're in 11 personnel, which is when they're spreading the field, which is where they're at their best, which is about sort of manipulating the numbers up front. We always talk about the +1 in the running game. That's where they succeed. They're number 5 in 12 personnel when it gets more condensed. When you have 2 tight ends, are still really good, but not as good because they don't have the same now. And that's why I had one scout tell me, you want to improve their running game, as silly as it seems, because it's already really good. Get another receiver or another receiving tight end, because you're going to manipulate the numbers. You're going to be able to spread the field. As counterintuitive as it is, again, other than the health standpoint, which is big, I'm not dismissing it, but the Eagles have said, I'm just going on the Eagles, and they've said it pretty consistently. We're not taking away a superpower. We're not paying them more to do less. They've said it pretty consistently, so I'm going on the Eagles here. You're as counterintuitive it is, whether you want to go to Walter Payton, Jim Brown, Bijan Robinson, or wherever you think it is. Just him turning around and handing the football off is not going to be as effective as what they do in 11 personnel now. That's been my whole point since the start of this sort of running back kerfuffle. And if you shot him up with the true serum, he'd be like, I don't want to do that. But he's not going to admit it either way.
Every quarterback wants to drop back and throw it 50 times, so he would not be alone if that were what came out after a dose of truth serum. You're quoting stats and facts to me here, Johnny Mac, but that flies in the face of the fact that the Eagles are going to acquire Derrick Henry on draft night, and they're just going to pound the ball into the opposition. This upcoming
well, all I said about that was that would be the least Eagles-y thing ever to acquire Derrick Henry. There's no truth to that. I give one fan credit, because I've been, amazed at how many fans are obsessed with running back in the modern era, and forget about in the modern era in general, with this team that they watch, and yet they're obsessed with running backs. And forget about Derrick Henry. It was Ezekiel Elliott first, and then it was Dalvin Cook, and now it's Derrick Henry
in the middle. Yes.
And now it's Derrick Henry, and Bijan's been overriding presence of it all. And I give, one fan credit. He was joking a little bit, obviously, but he said, hey, they're always ahead of the curve. Maybe they're going to trade for Derrick Henry and draft Bijan Robinson and turn football back into the 1970s. And I give him more credit than most. Look, they are what they are. Jeffrey Lurie tells you there are certain things, like when Jeffrey Lurie tells you what he wants this offense to be, he's not lying to you, because he's been pretty consistent with it. When Howie Roseman tells you he's going to default to offensive and defensive linemen, he's not lying to you, because he does it. I don't know. I mean, fantasy football, video games. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
I'll get back to the drafting of a running back. And again, well on record here, I'm okay with Bijan Robinson if they take him at number 10. If they drop down a little bit, they get a little bit more value at it. Take him at 14 or 15. I'm okay. I think Bijan Robinson is going to be a very special player. I like Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. I think he's going to be a second-round pick. If Howie can play the let's make a deal, move around the draft, get him at just the right spot, that would be my preference with their second-round pick, so they didn't have to use one of their 2 first-round picks to take a running back. So that's best case scenario for me. But I'm a Bijan guy. I'm not saying you can't say, oh, my God, there's no such thing as a running back taken in the top half of the first round. I don't buy that for a millisecond. Here's why I'll stick with that at least and dismiss Derrick Henry latest, the Viking guy second, and going all the way back to Ezekiel. I laughed when I read the Ezekiel Elliott thing. I actually thought it was funny because it was the most bold-faced maneuver I'd ever seen. He just wanted to put the Eagle name into the mix so the Cowboys would pay attention. So that
I almost called you up on the Ezekiel Elliott thing just to do a special show to say no. To do it immediately.
That had zero chance of happening. But at least with the guys who were in this year's draft, there's value. And you talk about Howie Roseman and coming forth and telling you exactly. He talks about value. Whenever you guys get a chance leading up to the draft, he talks about value. Well, you're getting a running back on a rookie deal who you can plug and play. There are running backs that come in year one, day one, NFL career, and are productive players. That makes sense. Getting a running back with all the tread off the tires, I don't care how good they've been, and they're making $7, $8, $9, $10, $11 million. That makes no sense. All it is name recognition, Johnny Mac. So I can't throw all the running backs into one big pot of stew. They're different. A draftable running back this year is one thing. A veteran running back, albeit has a resume in the National Football League, they're just not the same exact thing to me. And I think people that are trying to make it one big stew, I think are just absolutely off.
They'll first of all, they've already proven, look, they'll start talking about running backs usually in the second round. They drafted Miles in the second round. They'll draft a running back in the second round. When we talk about positional value, it doesn't mean they're never going to draft a particular position. They drafted Nakobe Dean in the third round. They drafted Davion Taylor in the third round. They all linebackers. They'll draft these players with premium picks, draft these positions. They're not going to do it at the top of the draft, top 10. And as the value gets better, sure. I mean, that's what happened with Nakobe Dean. The value was too good to pass up. They didn't think they were going to get Nakobe Dean in the third round. And he was there and they took him. So it's not that they're never going to take these players. I mean, they've done it in the past. They'll do it again. I think they're going to draft a running back this week. Just not in the first round. I think they're going to add. I've been pretty consistent with that. You've asked me a number of times, he's going to lead the Eagles in carries. And I say it's TBD because he's not here yet. That's my thought. And it might be Rashad Penny if he can ever stay healthy. But if you're asking me to bet, I'm going TBD. Right. So you're right. But as far as the veterans, and I've heard, well, he'll be like LeGarrette Blount. What LeGarrette Blount cost the veteran minimum in May. Yep. Yeah, if they cut him, he might be LeGarrette Blount. And by the way, be a hell of a lot better than LeGarrette Blount. I don't know why these people conflate. This is Derrick Henry. This ain't LeGarrette Blount, who was a good, solid player. Even with all the tread, if he gets cut and he'll come in for the veteran minimum, which I can't imagine in a million years he would do, sure. But they're not going to trade for him. And add $10 million on top of it because you got to pick up the contract. And by the way, he wants a new contract. He's like every other veteran player. He's got no guaranteed money left. He wants an extension. So that part of it's silly. Same thing with Dalvin Cook. He's got a big deal. Look, if they cut him, if he's willing to come in and ring chase, it'd be a great fit. But that's down the road. Certainly not involving trades or anything of that aspect.
And I will predict right now, I know it's floating out there as a rumor, Vikings are not going to cut Dalvin Cook. If they can trade him and get something for him, I think they would consider that. But they're not.
Oh boy, I think they're going to cut him.
You think they're going to cut him? All
yeah,
right.
well, they have no money. They have no money under the cap. They got to do something. They can't even sign the rookie class. So, whether it's Zadarius Smith or Dalvin Cook, those are the two players that people assume they're going to move on from. Yeah, they prefer to trade them. Maybe it's even an Allen Robinson like trade where they're paying some money to get out of it. Baseball sort of like trade, basketball like trade. But I don't think they can, and they paid the backup, starter money, which indicates they're going to move on at some point. And that's part of the problem because, look, they have a very young GM, not as savvy at this point as, say, Howie Roseman. So you've signaled to everybody you're going to move on. So why is anybody going to trade for the guy? They're just going to wait for you to cut him.
All right. I think there are other moves they can and will make before they'll move away from Dalvin Cook. I know they've got their backup signed, but Dalvin Cook's still a pretty good player, except for one thing. Do you know who had more rushing yards last year than Dalvin Cook, Johnny Mac?
Miles Sanders?
That would be Miles Sanders. You know who rushed for more yards per attempt than Dalvin Cook?
Yeah, Miles Sanders.
You know who had more touchdowns than Dalvin Cook?
Miles Sanders.
And the Eagles let Miles Sanders walk out the door for a reasonable deal to the Carolina Panthers. So do you really see the Eagles paying a significant
Nothing against Miles, who had a career year, though. But that's what I'm talking about with Jalen Hurts. All right, we all know Dalvin Cook is a descending player, but he's been a significantly better player than Miles Sanders over his career. If you put Dalvin Cook with Jalen Hurts, you're going to get better. You're going to get better than Miles Sanders because he's a better player. But that's my whole point.
He's with Kirk Cousins, your guy, the potential Hall of Famer someday.
Kirk Cousins is a drop back passer. Kirk Cousins is who you want Derrick Henry for. Jalen Hurts is manipulating the box, I don't know how many times I can say this. Jalen Hurts makes running backs better. Derrick Henry would make Kirk Cousins better. Derrick Henry isn't making Jalen Hurts better. Jalen Hurts manipulates the box, manipulates the numbers. That's why the Eagles were number one in 11 personnel running the football. They don't want to turn it around in a traditional running game and hand the football off to Derrick Henry. They don't want to hand the football off. They want to manipulate the front. And that's why Miles Sanders had a career year. And that's why the Eagles, by the way, made the right decision in letting Miles Sanders walk, because they will get to be determined. It might be Jacques Charbonneau, might be the kid from Pitt. It might be somebody else, and we're going to talk to Ian Cummings about it. They'll get somebody, and they're going to look like world beaters in this offense because of the offensive line and Jalen Hurts.
And Ian is in our green room, and I thank him for his patience. I got just one more question for you, and then we'll get to my promise. Why didn't Miles Sanders have the career year the previous year with Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback?
Well, why didn't Hassan Reddick have a career? Why do people have career years?
Well, Hassan Reddick was on another team. Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders were teammates on the Eagles.
But people have career years. Miles deserves a lot of credit. He had a very, very good season. But the Eagles, remember, the Eagles offense, even though Miles wasn't effective, the Eagles running offense as effective. His yards per carries were. The touchdowns were weird. They take him off the field. He didn't, that's kind of something that's, you can't count on. It comes into sometimes you have a big year, sometimes you have a career year. Overall, the effectiveness of the Eagles running game was still there. Was still there with Jalen Hurts. It's been off the charts since Jalen Hurts, the Eagles running game, since he's taken over. He's the key to it. He's the crux to it. Not the running backs. He's the crux to
it. Johnny's going down to talk to Jalen Hurts today. I think he's starting well by overstating how good the Eagle running game was in 2021. No, this past year was great. 2021, it was not comparable to 2022.
I'm talking about in the NFL. They were a better team. I mean, they were the best team in the NFL for the majority of the year. They were 14-1. The year before that, they weren't as good. They weren't as good as a team. He was still finding his way, but they still ran the football effectively. They still ran the football very, very effectively. They were just a much better team this year. So, of course, everything went up. They're not getting 70 sacks this year. I mean, they're just not. I mean, it was one of those special years. And Miles was part of that. Miles deserves a lot of credit. But I do think the Eagles made the right decision and understand, look, his numbers are inflated a little bit because of the quarterback. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Yeah, we got to get the incomings. From Pro Football Network, Draft Insider, Ian Cummings joins us next here on Birds 365.